Hello, let's continue the video of showing you how to use MySQL Workbench to create the database used in the textbook as well as running some queries. Now let's first start the MySQL Workbench. So this is the landing page for MySQL Workbench. Then click on the icon here. It's going to ask to put in the password. Enter your password. Click OK. And that's become our working environment. Because we usually do not look at the navigator and the SQL additions at this stage, let's remove those two areas by clicking on this and that. So basically remove that to give us more space, more working space. Now suppose you already actually run the SQL queries just a moment ago about create the database. So I'm going to briefly show you how to do that. So the first step is the file, run SQL scripts, and then find where's your unzipped file folder. So this is my actually unzipped file folder. Okay, so I go here, I go to my SQL, I go to SQL scripts. Then the file that we need to choose is sales order structure my.sql. This is the first one, and then you click on the open and then write. So that's the first step. The second step is basically the same thing. You go to the file, run SQL scripts, and then we go to this unzipped folder. The second one is 01. The first one is actually create the table database structure. The second one is 01 sales order data my.sql. You do this, it's going to populate all the rows, all the information into those tables. Okay, so as I have already run those, so I already have that in my database, so I do not need to rerun that. I just want to show you how you can create the database that is going to be used in the textbook by simply run two queries. Okay, now how the first one is, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, is can you show me what are the database that is actually available for us to use in the system? To do that, I can highlight, I can double click, basically it's going to highlight the whole line. I can also choose on the left click and then I choose this statement, and then I click on this lighting icon here. Is going to run. Okay, in the status output it shows successfully. The green is successfully, and this is actually the database, the output from the show database statement. This means it's run successfully, and this shows all the databases that is available. And we are actually just created a sales order example database. It is indeed part of the database here. Okay, the next one, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, it is use sales order example. Okay, once we use that, basically any of those tables in that database is readily available for us to use. And you may want to know what are those tables. Then what we can do is going to highlight the next one, show tables, and then write. Okay, so now we have show tables It also says runs successfully, and we see there are a few tables: category, customer, employee, order status, etc. There are a few tables here. And then, how about customer? I want to know a little bit more about customer. What's the columns in this table, and what are the data types for that table? Let's do this. It's a describe customer. It's going to describe the customer table to show you more details. Now we can see that the customer table, the fields or the columns, there are customer ID, customer first name, customer last name, etc., etc. So those are all the fields in the customer table. And we also know what are the types. Customer ID is an integer, and customer first name is a character, etc., etc. So there are some basic information. And also we know which one is the key. Okay, the primary key. In this particular case, customer ID is the primary key. Default, there's no default, none. Okay, and so those are the basically all the fields for the customer. The describe function statement is very useful when you have no idea what is within that customer table. Okay, the next one, let's run a simple query using select. Select is actually people usually use this kind of like to run everything. The select star from customers is going to return every row and every column from the customer. It is fine if your table is relatively small. In this particular one, it is very small, so not many rows. You have only around 28 rows, so very tiny table, so you can do that. But it's going to show you all the rows and all the columns for that table. We know that this customer ID, customer first name, last name, etc. It show you everything. But please be very cautious of use this. When your table is large, it is particularly true in production environment. For one table, you may have 100 gigabytes of data. When you use this, you may actually knock down your system because it's going to request a lot of resource. So the star here means select all the columns from the customer table. Okay, and because we didn't put in any constraints, it's going to return everything. For smaller table, it's okay, but for larger table, it is you should never do this. That's a bad thing for large tables. Please remember, never do this for large tables or tables you do not know the detail. Instead, there are better ways to do that. You can use the limit 10 as one of the constraints of give me all the columns but only return 10 rows. Okay, let's see what's the difference. Okay, now it returns everything. Let's do this. It's going to run. And then it's returned the first 10 rows. Okay, the customer ID goes from 1 to 10. It's only 10 rows. So this is a much better way to take a peek of what is inside the table. And the limit actually clause is going to limit how many rows you can get. In this particular case, is only return 10 rows. And still star means return every columns. I want to know every columns from the customer table, but only give me 10 rows. This is what it's going to do. The select statement can select multiple columns, and the star is a shortcut to select everything, but sometimes you want only select a specific subset of your columns. You can actually separate all the columns you want to select by comma, and then use the from to see which kind of table we want. Please remember at the last columns, you do not need to put a comma at the end. If you put one, it's actually going to be give you some error message. Let's do this. This is the right one to do it. Okay, so we want to select what is the customer ID and what's the customer state. Okay, it's actually going to return all the rows, but only 2 columns. Okay, so far everything actually, every line runs correctly. You see, there's no error. Now let's make some error. If I add in a comma at the last column here, let's write to see what will happen. Now there's a error. It's mentioned you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the menu that corresponding to my SQL server, blah blah blah, and then it didn't actually return much useful information in that particular one. There's only error code 1064, and we may actually try to find out what is the error for that particular code. So far, there's not much information by looking at the error code. Actually, it gives us some idea. So the right syntax for using at line 2. So basically, in this particular one, we artificially introduce this unnecessary comma. It's actually introduced the error. Let's remove this and we write again, and we're going to see it actually runs fine this time. So yeah, once there's some error, you may actually see some of those difference there. Okay, the next one we're going to see is adding actually a where clause. In this particular one, we know that in the customer table there are a particular column called customer state. We know there are a few states that's available, like Washington WA and Oregon OR, etc. And now let's select only 2 columns, and for rows we only want to take the customers that are actually from Washington. In this particular case, the Washington is a character. We need to put a quotation mark around that to make it specifically as a character. And the customer state equal, this one is equal to, is only return the customer's first name and last name, and their customer state is Washington. Okay, after we write, those are the customers actually who are from Washington, their first name and last name. Then we can see that customers' name are not in a particular order. Sometimes it's not easy to track. We can actually order the result by the column names that is actually included in the select statement. We can order them by last name and then by first name. We can order them by different orders. The descending order, we can put in the keywords DESC after the column name, and basically it's going to order their last name first by descending order, and then order by their first name. In this particular case, we ask for a ascending order. Okay, now let's run this. It is also returned by the same, actually last name and first name, but in this particular one, we see that the first record ordered by last name, okay, by descending order, so it's V, T, S, etc. This is by this order, but within the same last name, we're going to order that first name by ascending order. So that is from A to Z. The last name is from Z to A. So this is one way you can order your result as what you want. The next one is The next one is let's choose, for example, the customer state from the customer table. Is actually going to give us the state for each customer. But sometimes you just want to know how many different states that all those customers comes from. In this particular case, we need to remove the duplicated records. To remove the duplicate records, we add in the distinct keywords before any of those columns. Okay, so now let's write. It's going to show you the customer state, the select a distinct customer state from the customer table. It's become 4 states: Washington, Texas, Oregon, and California. So those are all the customers. So basically for this particular session, we learned how to run some basic queries, and now it's your turn to do the exercise. After you are familiar with the queries, and go to the homework and finish homework number 3 and submit your homework through eCollege. That's all for today, and see you next week.